What is going on? Welcome back to Jiu-Jitsu Outlet. I'm sitting down with the man, Reece Humphrey. You might know him better as Highlight Humphrey on Instagram. Dude, I know you're a really high-level wrestler, and I know that you spend a lot of time coaching kids. I'm really excited to have you, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me on, man. I'm always down to grow the sport, whether it's wrestling or jujitsu or adult wrestling, just trying to do my part.
I love it, man. And I really loved watching your content on Instagram. I really love your style and your mission. Sounds like we're really on the same wavelength about a lot of stuff with trying to make martial arts more accessible, whether it's judo or wrestling or jiu-jitsu or any of these things, man. But I'd love to hear about how you're helping kids in the different camps that you're doing. But first, I want to talk about the question that we ask everyone when they come on this show, whether they're a UFC fighter, a high-level jiu-jitsu guy, or a brand new white belt who maybe just started training. That question is, how has training in the combat arts impacted your mental health since you started training?
Everything that I do, I relate it to wrestling. Uh, it's just those tough moments. There's so many tough moments in life, and wrestling just makes them exponentially greater. Those moments are so often, so you have to be able to deal with them if you want to win matches and if you want to be a successful wrestler in practice or in competition. So I'm always going back to how would I do this on the mat. So if I got a tough day, I've been working all day, and then 2 or 3 days times on the mat, and then my kids are running around, and I still want to be a good dad, and I still want to do the things I want to do and play with them. I have to get tough in those moments. And so I always say, if you want to be a good dad, you got to be able to get kicked in the nuts and move forward. It's a little different than the Rocky quote, but it's just all about being tough and all about handling those situations and doing the next best thing. And sometimes life goes crazy and everything just gets chaotic and it's really tough to deal with, but wrestling is the exact same way. And so we're just constantly trying to make those adjustments and do the next best thing. And that's how life, same way.
It's true, man. It's like an allegory for everything in life in so many ways. How did you notice that impacting you as you kind of went and started competing at a higher level? Like, what changes did you kind of notice in yourself as you started going from, I guess, being more amateur to taking this in a more professional direction?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Competition at any level, if it's fair and if you got two equal guys, it's going to be those same similar battles. Obviously, the details get more technical, and those moments you have to be a lot tougher. But when you're in a fair competition, those battles are extremely tough and mentally and physically, and so you have to train that way. And if you train really tough all the time, you don't give up points. You don't say, I could do it in competition if I just tried harder. You have to continuously do that in practice daily, every single day, on the mat, off the mat, and then just become so tough that if somebody wants to score on you, they really have to earn it. And then you find that breaking point and you can hold on and defend takedowns longer, or you can find that breaking point to where you have to turn down and give up the takedown and know that you can just use that work and make that takedown a little bit harder for them. And then as soon as you get up, get right back in their face. So it's really similar to what I'm watching my son do at the youth level when he's in really tight matches. I'm talking about this same stuff all the time to him. For when I was competing internationally, obviously the level is much higher and the competition is much tougher, but you're better and you're there for a reason. So those moments are still really critical. If you have a really hard scramble, you go out of bounds. I say first contact. So I want to get on my opponent as fast as I can when we're both really tired. As soon as you go into those like hold on modes and try and stall modes, bad things start happening. So you're always just trying to disrupt your opponent and stay in his space. And it goes from youth to high school to collegiate to senior level to the worlds and the Olympics. And it's all the same stuff. It's just a little more technical as you get better.
Yeah, man. It reminds me a lot of business, kind of what you're talking about. Like, I've been running a digital marketing agency since 2016. Now I have a jiu-jitsu academy. And in business, we always say, like, you're either growing or you're dying. You're either moving forward and the business is expanding, or it's dying. There's no such thing as just a stagnant business that's just staying the same. It's one of those two. And I feel like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, judo, and especially in MMA at the highest levels, like, there's no such thing as a stagnant position. You're totally right. Like, you can't just chill with someone and at the higher levels. You have to move, you have to be aggressive. And man, like, what did you notice that do to you as you were able to kind of have that outlet? You were able to, like, really hold yourself to that high standard. Like, how did that impact your life off the mats and other
Yeah.
areas?
So once you raise the bar, and this happens constantly from youth to all the way to senior level, once you raise the bar, if you're really trying to be successful, you never go under that bar. And so you just continuously raise the bar and your standard gets higher and higher, and you get to the peak of that. And maybe you're in the beginning, you were jumping feet, and then towards the end, you're only jumping inches, but you're constantly raising the bar and setting a standard for yourself. And so the more you do that. So I think a date on the calendar is really important because you get really focused. But once you get really focused, that's your new standard. And then you just keep finding new ways to increase that and improve your performance and be more successful. And it happens on the mat, obviously, but it's the same thing. Like, I can really appreciate that you're an entrepreneur and you got your own club and you got your own business. I'm doing the same thing with adult wrestling with my buddy CJ. And it's constant. You have to be growing. We're always looking for the next thing. How can we make this better? And there's 100 problems that happen. There's 100 different tasks we have to do, but don't get overwhelmed. Take them one at a time and just improve, and keep learning and have an open mind. And it's just it's the same as competition, man. Like I said before, everything goes back to wrestling. When things get really hard, I just go back to those wrestling days and think about, this isn't that hard, man. No one's got a half on me. I'm not cutting weight. I'm just trying to do business, man. So put
Right.
pen to paper and just keep working and just keep improving. It's really, really important.
Man, that's such a good way to think about it. I hadn't exactly put words to it like that. That, once you're at that standard, you can't ever go below. It's like, you're so right. Signing up for a tournament or something like that, or having a
Mhm.
wrestling match coming up as often as wrestlers do, it forces you to that standard, and then you can't ever go back. I'm gonna remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. So always keep striving, man. Like, it's just as soon as you push really hard, it's just really hard to go back to where you came from. So push really hard, and then you're just like, most of the time, good things happen when you do that, right? So
Right.
if I do this work, I push really hard, good things happen, and then you're like, man, I could push a little harder, and then it just keeps raising that bar, and you just keep getting better and better as a human, as an athlete.
Man, I love it. So, one of the big things I wanted to talk to you about is all the training that you've done with kids. Like, I know that you do some really cool camps. I was watching one of your videos the other day, and it got me really inspired to start doing camps myself. So, I really appreciate you doing that and putting out that content. But I just really love to talk about that for a minute. Like, as you've been working with kids, especially in that sort of like intensive setting, what do you see happen in their mental health or in the way that they carry themselves? Like, how does that change over the course of their first day all the way up to when they become a savage and they've
Yeah,
been working
right,
for a
right.
minute?
So the camps are for everybody, all skill levels. Most of the time, it's not the most elite of the elite training for something. It's just kids that want to have fun and want to get better at wrestling. And I can appreciate that, but it's also 4 practices a day for 4 or 5 days. And they always bring me in the last day because I have that high energy and I get there and these kids they're zombies, dude. Then they're don't want to be there anymore. So as a clinician, it's my job to make it really fun and exciting and different. And so we dance. I make them do stupid, funny little athletic tricks, and it changes the vibe of. And I think everybody has this opinion of wrestling around the country that we're so aggressive and we're so in your face. It doesn't have to be that. Jiu-jitsu does a great job. Judo does a great job of technique and rolling and having fun. And of course, there's going to be that moment where you switch from the rolling and the flowing to basically fist fighting each other. But in that whole process, you can be having fun. And when kids are having fun, or when my athletes, we do this at the senior level too. When my athletes are having fun and they really enjoy being in the room, they think about it more, they have a positive experience, and everything is good around wrestling, which is going to keep more kids in the sport, which is going to keep kids more excited to come back. And when you're excited to be there, you pay attention more, you learn more, and I wouldn't even call it goofing around. It's focused fun, and it's just way better. I get such a better response. The coaches love it. Everybody learns a lot, and it's more fun for me too. But it's hard. It's hard to bring that energy all the time, and people expect that of me. And like I said, I'm doing so many of these camps and clinics. I'm on the mat 3 times a day and training on the side, and sometimes I'm walking in there dead. And it's still my job. It's my responsibility to give these kids a good clinician, a good camp, and teach them, and then show them that that's how wrestling should be done. And so I always step up. I just kind of take a deep breath, and then I put on my energy face. And then as soon as the camp is over, back the zombie. And so it's a grind, but I think it's really important.
Yeah, and it shows people that sort of dedication and that sort of ability to snap into it. Because if you think about it, that's the same stuff that you need at a high level wrestling match or any of these sort of high level tournaments where you need to be able to kind of snap into that mode. And honestly, I feel like if you are really enjoying what you do and it's really fun, like for me, I get energy from teaching a lot of times. And sometimes I'll be able to go in and feel super tired and then I'll be able to get more energy from it. Whereas like, man, if you put me to go work at a regular 9 to 5, like I don't get that. I'm totally drained at the end of the day to the point where I just couldn't even, keep up with it. So I had to go and try to work for myself. But man, like I just want to talk a little more on that because that's something I hear from instructors a lot. Like, how do you avoid burnout? Or is there anything that you do that really you can attribute? Like, I know you're right now getting stem cells done, like as we're speaking. So that's one thing, but just, yeah, are there any secret to it, to like being able to do it like this and not burn out, but still be doing it at a high level?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a secret. I think you really got to enjoy being there, and whatever that means to you, do that. So I think as a coach, be authentic. We say be an exaggerated version of yourself. If you're funny, be really funny. If you're nerdy, be extra nerdy, but have some energy. And if you're cool, say some cool jokes. Like everything just kind of goes much better when you're being authentic. Don't try and be me. I won't try and be you. Don't try and be this guy you saw on YouTube. Be yourself, but be yourself a little bit exaggerated, just really high energy. And you have to continue that energy because sometimes I come in there and I'm dancing and I'm yelling, I'm loud and it's fun, and the kids are just not feeling it. But if I keep on them and I keep that energy up, sometimes they'll try and suck you down, suck you down to that lower energy. But if you don't fall for it, you have to keep fighting through it and find a couple kids that are feeding into it. And you'll find that, and then you'll bring the room up, and it can really change the whole experience for the athlete.
Man, that's such a good point. And you're right that if it's fun for them, they'll keep coming back. If they can associate wrestling with fun and like this is where my friends are hanging out, then they'll be hooked for a lifetime. They'll always remember as an adult that they can get that sort of a result from going to train martial arts and stuff like that. And man, I know that you're also really passionate about getting adults into wrestling. Can you talk a little bit about the adult wrestling program you have and
Yeah,
just
man.
like,
Yeah.
what are the
Yeah,
results
can't
you've
wait.
seen with that so far?
So here's our shirt. This is the logo. We got our our cartoon logo, and I envision that. So we do these adult wrestling classes at wrestling gyms, but also jujitsu gyms, and so they always have the sensei up there. We want this little cartoon right next
Oh, I
because
love it.
that's the hardest thing. We talked about it earlier, changing the stigma of wrestling from super aggressive and headbutting each other to flowing. And you can do that at an older age. Maybe you don't need to headbutt anybody ever again. But wrestling is very technical. It's a martial art, and it can be that same thing. And so we're trying to build a community of like-minded individuals that want to help their kids. They want to make their club better. They want to learn technique themselves so they can watch MMA a different way. And so it's just such an important thing for the world, I think. The world is very soft, in my opinion, and everybody needs to be a little bit tougher, and combat sports do that to you. But as an adult, we think we can't just train like we used to. Well, you can't, and that's totally fine, but you can lower the level and still get that feeling of rolling and wrestling. And it's basically fighting somebody, and every fight starts on the feet. And I love jujitsu, but every fight does start on the feet. And so you have to have those takedowns to go along with your jujitsu. And so I think wrestling is going to really blow up. And so we've been doing these classes in New Jersey and in PA, and we're getting ready to take it nationwide, working every single day on it, and with no payoff right now. We do these classes for very, very cheap. And we're hoping that we can just really spread the word of wrestling can be done at the adult level. And there's really nothing out there that's franchised. I know of a bunch of classes, but nothing franchised that's nationwide. And so I got all my USA Wrestling buddies. I have such a really good network of high level individuals that are way overqualified to run these beginner level classes. But man, it's so fun. These people are really appreciative. Working with the kids is great, but the moms and dads that come to our class, they really want to be there for themselves. So they listen much better. They ask really good questions. I don't have to continuously tell them to work hard. And so yeah, man, it's just I think we can really change the game and grow wrestling in a really big way because there's nothing in that space. And so we're working really, really hard on it and getting closer every day.
Dude, that's amazing. We got to keep in touch about that because I want to get you
Yeah.
back on the show when it's a little bit bigger and we can kind of
Yes,
chart
sir.
the journey and see how this grows. But dude,
Oh
that's
yeah.
freaking awesome. So let me ask you this because now I'm curious about this question. Like, what's the best way that you found to avoid injuries during these sorts of classes? Because that's the number one thing that I always hear from older people at jiu-jitsu. They're always like, oh man, I don't want to go hard in the takedowns. I don't want to do takedown sparring necessarily because I'm afraid of
Mhm.
getting injured because I'm older, because I've got a bad hip or I've got a bad back or this, that, the other thing. So, like, how do you structure it in a way where adults can still go and have that sort of intensity, but without, that injury? Is there a way, or is that just always going to be kind of a part of the game?
Yeah. So we've been doing it for 2 years. We've had one injury. It's because another group fell into the other group. So it's that injuries are going to happen, but I'm hurt too, and I don't want to get hurt.
Yeah.
So know your limits. So we do the majority of the class is technique and drilling and sparring, which is clearly hard enough for everybody that's not training full time. But then there's also a section where we either continue drilling, we spar, or we actually go live. Some people really want to wrestle live, and that's cool. But you have to know what you and your partner have to be on the same page. We say whenever you shake hands or dap it up, like, are we drilling, are we sparring, or are we live? And so everybody's on the same page, and then and even in the live, these guys aren't trying to kill each other. We're all on the same team. That's team don't get hurt. It's team Tylenol. And so we're just taking it at our own pace, and we're here to learn and get better, and getting hurt ruins all of that. And so we bring it up at the beginning of every single class, and everybody just knows that, and clearly everybody's on the same page because nobody wants to get hurt. So know your body, know your skill level, and every exercise or skill that we do can have an alternate modified exercise to go with it. And so everything's low pace, low key, and everything's real fun. But if there's something you don't feel comfortable doing, don't do it. And it's totally fine. If you get tired, sit on the side. I'll keep running goes and take a break. Go get water whenever you want. It's not no sprints, no getting in trouble. You're there for yourself. If you're tired, take a break. Don't get hurt.
Right. Are there any techniques that you ban, or are you allowing like all different techniques during the live rounds?
Yeah, anything goes. But we preach position and head up, back straight, hips in, are the golden rules of wrestling. And so we're always constantly going back to that. And people get hurt when they get extended and they get a little bit out of position because things get heavier. And so if we understand not to get extended and keep our head up and hips in, we got a much better chance of not getting hurt. And then if you are really tired, sit off to the side until you're fresh enough to wrestle again,
Yeah.
or just wrestle hard for a little bit and then go down to a spar, go down to drilling and keep moving. As long as we keep explaining it to these people and they don't try and push themselves too hard, um, like past that breaking point, you can obviously
Yeah.
push yourself pretty hard, but past that breaking point is when people get hurt. When you get extended, people get hurt. And as long as you and your partner are on the same page and it's not competition, so you're not trying to rip their shoulder off, we haven't had any injuries really.
Man, that's awesome. And what you're saying really reminded me of my first judo coach, John Anderson. He was a legend on the East Coast in the judo community, and he was still training when he was like 85, 86, 87, and he was still throwing us. You know what I mean? Like he was
Right,
still
right.
doing randori and sparring, lightly. He wouldn't go 100% when he was that old, but he would still go. He would still do the
Yeah,
sparring with you. And
yeah,
my other sensei in college, Lanny Reed, up in Pennsylvania. He was in his 70s and he was a 6th-degree judo black belt. And dude, this guy would
yeah.
just throw you on your butt with no problem.
Right, right.
I remember he
Uh-huh.
would get me with his gi and he would choke you out as he was throwing you. Like this guy, they were at
Yeah,
such a high level that you couldn't even do anything to them, because they
right,
had
right.
mastered the
Mhm.
fundamentals so much. So man, you're kind of really encouraging me that, my suspicions are true, that adults can
Yeah,
practice takedowns and be in a safe environment.
definitely. And you don't even have to be a wrestler to start wrestling. Half of our class is jujitsu players all the time, and the other half is either old wrestlers that haven't been on the mat in 10, 15 years, or people that have never touched the mat, and their kids are into it, and they're like, man, I wish I wrestled. And now that option is available. And so we got guys, we're working on stance and penetration stuff and just showing them the ins and outs so they can actually tell their kids something of value. I go to these youth wrestling tournaments with my son, and I hear so many parents yelling at their kid, "Just get up, just get up." I'm like, "You get up, bitch."
Yeah, right.
It's not that
It's hard.
easy, bro. It's not that easy if you don't know what to do. And so maybe teach them to get, or maybe teach them keep your elbows in. Maybe teach them get your head up and find a way to get separation. Like they'll have actual cues to actually help their kids and see the match a different way instead of getting mad at them for not trying hard enough when it's just a technique issue.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. And I've felt that about parents and putting their kids in martial arts like since the beginning. I always think the parents should definitely take at least a couple classes. There's so many parents that just come and drop their kid off and they just watch, you know. And I get it if you got maybe like a baby to watch or something like that, or you know, if you're pregnant or there's some like legitimate reason
Right,
you
right,
can't
yeah, yeah,
participate. But yeah, I mean, otherwise there's no reason you can't participate, you know, like
yeah,
especially if it's a class where there's both ages, you know, there's adults and
yeah.
kids involved in a
Yeah,
lot of it.
right. It makes it a lot smoother when there's more adults to roll with because you don't want every adult rolling with every kid.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
exactly.
you gain some perspective, you gain some humility because we all think that we exaggerate our skill sets from when we were superstars in high school or in college, and then you get 10, 15 years away from that, like your squat numbers probably increase. They're probably not your actual max, you know, because we've talked about it for so long. But if you get on the mat, you actually see how hard things are, and you remember what it's like to be the man in the arena. And it's not easy mentally, physically. It's not easy to just hold position. These things are all really hard to do, and they sound pretty simple when you talk about them. But if you haven't touched a mat and actually done it yourself in 10, 15 years, it's going to be hard to put yourself in that position. So you can do it at a low pace, and you can actually gain that perspective and really give real advice to the people that you care about.
Man, this has been such a great conversation. Like you've given me a lot to think about in terms of this.
Awesome.
But let's say there's someone listening and they want to start a wrestling program or they want to get in touch with you to talk about being a part of what you're starting. Like, can you give us a little more information about what that would
Mm-hmm.
look like and just, you
Yeah.
know, what you think they should do?
Right now, I would just say DM me on Instagram would probably be the best way to get a hold of me at Highlight Humphrey. But we're building a website right now, and it's awesome. We have no funding right now, so we're just asking favors of the wrestling community, and you'd be shocked at how many people want to help. And so this dude's making a website for us. We got a guy incorporate the adult wrestling club. It's OGWC, the Old Guy Old Girl Wrestling Club. So we're incorporated. We're just getting piece by piece. The website's being built, and then we'll have all the answers on there for your questions. But for right now, you can actually follow the page OG Wrestling Club, and we do really fun stuff and trying to change that stigma of too aggressive and too tough all the time. Let loose, enjoy yourself, and ask me any questions. I love talking about it. It helps me through the process too.
Man, thank you so much for doing this. And let's say there's someone listening and they're an academy owner and they're like, man, I just want to start doing this like more in jiu-jitsu class, or they maybe just want to incorporate more of wrestling into their jiu-jitsu. Like, what tips would you give them? Just, you know, about how to kind
Yeah.
of get started with that.
Yeah, so we have a video series coming out. We already shot it. We're just waiting for the right time. It's all set, edited, done with the document that explains it all very simply. So that'll come out pretty soon. That'll be for sure. It goes over technique on a bunch of real basic moves, but also how to keep high energy in a practice, how to run a warm up, all those things that go along with a practice, or even more specifically, an adult wrestling practice. But there's tips for jujitsu coaches that want to help improve bringing that energy, or just finding a different opinion on how we run practice can help you. So that'll be coming out soon. We did it all through Ocean, which is Jason Nolf's new company. It's a technique company. And so there's a ton of technique on there. I did a technique series on there. I've got technique on Fanatic Wrestling. I'm sure you guys know about Fanatic BJJ. So I have a technique series if you really want to go into detail, but it all stems from keeping balance in your stance, and keeping your head up, back straight, hips in, and getting pressure into your opponent. All those things kind of correlate to everything. So if you ask yourself those questions when you're going through moves, it makes it pretty simple.
Reece, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Is there anything else that you want to share with us before we wrap this up?
Yes, sir. So if you guys are watching and you like music, we do a lot of music. So you can look us up on Spotify. Me and my boy that does the adult wrestling with me, CJ Brucky. You can search Highlight and Young Bruck, and you can find us on Spotify. We got an album and a couple EPs out, and we got some new stuff coming in, and it feels just like wrestling. I can't compete anymore, but music is frustrating. It's exciting. It's that creative outlet. It feels just like a wrestling match in a completely different way. And we're having a lot of fun with it. We're getting better every single day, and super exciting stuff. We're performing in Hoboken August 11th. So if you want to come check that out, you can see on Instagram, I'm posting about it a lot. But yeah, man, check that out. Just another different avenue, man, because I'm not just a wrestler
Dude,
trying
that's
to chase a
awesome.
bunch of dreams. Yes, sir.
Do you got time for one more question? 'Cause now I got one
Come
more
on,
question.
come
Dude,
on.
so can you talk about that a little more? Like, how do you feel like music and wrestling are similar? Can you talk just a little more about that? Because that's something I'm super fascinated by.
Yeah, man, it's a challenge, you know. So it's nothing physical at all, but there's so much that goes into. You talk about mental health a lot. This is that mental battle that you have. The dark thoughts come in. Are the haters going to come out? If I lose, if I make a mistake, if I put this song out that isn't as good as I want it to be, but I don't care about that. You know, I'm just focused on my journey and my dream, and it's really fun. And if it ever turns into anything, awesome. If it doesn't, I'm having a blast. I'm having a blast going to practice. I'm having a blast going to the studio. We go 2 or 3 times a week, and the producer believes in us a lot. He charges us $0, and he puts a ton of work into it, and he's having a lot of fun with us too. And so we're getting way, way better every single time that we go in there. And so it's just like practice. Keep working on your craft, whether it's a high crotch or a note that you can't hit. Work on it. Get frustrated, think about it in the car, figure that problem out, solve it, and then get better. And so I can see music being a part of my life for a long, long time.
Reece, that's awesome, man. I'm definitely gonna check that out for real.
Okay.
And I'll add it to the playlist and everything, bro. But that's awesome. I love music. That's badass.
Awesome. Yeah, I got a song on there, Teach You How to Wrestle. It will actually teach you a little bit about wrestling. I did a Fanatic Wrestling series on all the techniques I go in. I break them all down and do the technical portion on the video. So you can check the song out, check the video out. It's good for kids too. Keep them a little bit interested in a different way.
Dude, I got it pulled up on Spotify right now. I'm gonna listen to it after we get off this call. That's awesome,
Awesome.
man. Dude, I love that, man. Yeah, keep me posted about how all this stuff goes. I'd love to have you back on
Yeah,
once everything's rocking and rolling. But Reece has been awesome. And hey, if you're listening to this, go check the show notes below and you'll find links for everything that Reece just talked about. So make sure you follow him on Instagram. Make sure you look up his album on Spotify. I'll put links to
let's
everything
go.
down below. But thank you, brother. This has been awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, man.